This is a good one to open up the show. By the way, a show that will have Barry's Verluga at 11:30 and Ryan Fowler from CBS Sports to talk some NFL with us at 12. We've got NFL buy and sell, and we've got other things as well. Big recruit locally about to make a big decision tonight at about 7 p.m. The kid from Blake in Silver Spring, Baba, is going to make his decision between Maryland, Arkansas, Georgetown, and Kentucky. He's a top 5 player in the class. He was the number 1 player in the 2027 basketball recruiting class. He reclassed and will make his decision tonight. Fingers crossed. Go Terps. This from John Z to open up the show. I just read this a little while ago. John, thank you for this. Kevin, I'm an Eagles fan, but I live here and listen all the time. The way you guys are reacting to this season is so Philadelphia. Just over-the-top reactionary to a situation that is beyond anyone's control. You had a caller the other day that I think with a straight face said that Mariota is as good as Jaden Daniels, LOL. You had a caller last week that thought Dan Quinn was a horrible choice to be the head coach and that he needs to go. Then there was another day where a caller said Adam Peters was the problem, and even after you listed about 10 new players beyond Daniels that he brought in last year to help the team nearly go to the Super Bowl, he just ignored you and said the drafts suck. I know that we've gotten some of these, but I think some of these have been we've gotten all of this. We've gotten the Peters, we've gotten the Quinn, we've gotten the Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota for sure. Anyway, John Z continues. On the drafts for you and your audience, Howie Roseman is one of the best to ever do it, but his 2019 and 2020 drafts overall were terrible, and they went to the Super Bowl in 2022. Drafts don't help you right away. They help you down the road. Remember Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson? One of the all-time first round within 1 pick misses. I know what he's saying. It was back-to-back picks, 22, 23, 21, 22, or whatever it was, where the Eagles took Reagor, and then the next pick, the Vikings took Justin Jefferson. Redskins fans, and then he writes parenthetically, no apologies, I still say the old name. No apologies necessary, John Z. Redskins fans need to calm down. Daniels is the real deal, and that's where it all starts. He's barely played, and you guys want everybody fired. It's extremely entertaining, but so WIP in Philly. WIP is the longtime heritage sports talk radio station in Philly. And by the way, for those of you that have ever been in Philly and turned on WIP, it's the best, especially seasons like this. He's 100% right. I mean, the reaction is fire everybody. Doesn't matter what they did last year. Doesn't matter what they did earlier in the season. Doesn't matter about anything. Fire everybody. It is the most reactionary sports talk radio in the country. Philly fans, their reputation, of course, precedes them. So here's what I want to do with this. Because I was on Ben's podcast last night, Ben Standig's podcast. Grant and I were on, Grant Paulson and I were on with Ben. And we were talking about, and I'm not even sure if we were talking about this when he was recording. We may have been talking about this prior to or after. And we were just talking about like the crazy reactions we've gotten this year. And what's the one that's the craziest? And I said, look, it's a choice between Peters should be fired, Quinn should be fired, or Jaden Daniels just isn't, what we thought he was. Those are the three. I don't think I'm missing one. That's pretty much the three. I mean, there's been some Terry talk, but those are the three biggies. And I'm like, look, to me, out of those three, they're all insane takes. And yeah, of course, it's reactionary. It's recency bias. It's living in the moment. It's believing you're watching something that sometimes you really aren't watching. And I'll just say this, because I think I told the guys this last night, and I think I've said this before. I think this season is absolutely impossible to evaluate. Sure, you can evaluate the kicker, and they did, and they moved on from him. I mean, maybe another move like the, Joe Witt Jr. move, just trying to make something happen in the midst of all of this misery. You can evaluate, certainly the kicking game, because there are so few plays, and the players that are out there are basically the players you thought were going to be out there for the most part. But it's almost impossible to evaluate the offense, the defense, the overall team. It just is. I mean, we can speculate on what would have happened had they stayed healthy. We can speculate on what would have happened had they just had a normal number of injuries. All of that is a matter of opinion, because one thing would have led to another, and we can't predict sort of the chain of events that would have unfolded had they stayed healthy. I mean, I would say to you right now, through 11 games, they'd be no worse than 5-6. They might be 6-5, but this is my speculation. I think we would be in the mode of excited about a potential stretch run, and hey, let's just get into the thing, because we saw what happened last year, and the tone would be completely different. But I do think that I'd be sitting here skeptical about what kind of contender they really were, and part of that would be just to look at the landscape of the NFC and notice that Philadelphia is really good, and that Detroit, Green Bay, the Rams, Seattle, they're just better overall teams. Like if we were 5-6, still very much in it, with, the schedule after Denver easing up a little bit until the final three, and then we'd be talking about maybe the Eagles have it clinched. They don't play for anything in week, 18, the 17th game of the season. All of that would be a big part of the conversation. But I think that's where they would be. But I want to be clear, I don't think, pure speculation, very hard to evaluate, I don't think I'd be sitting here thinking that they were as much of a contender as they were last year, at 7-2. And then when they got it rolling in December, I really thought, hey, man, they could be the 2 seed. If they're the 2 seed, they're basically 2 home games away from playing in the NFC Championship game. Now, they didn't get to the 2 seed. They ended up being the 6 seed, and they still got to the NFC Championship game. But overall, trying to evaluate this season is pure speculation in terms of what you think would have happened versus what did happen. And the evaluation of players and coaches is nearly impossible on an individual basis, except for players like kickers and punters and kick coverage and punt coverage, because of the few number of plays and the few, the lesser impact of this injury-riddled season on that particular area of the team. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, what do you think is kind of the absolute craziest, over-the-top reaction to the situation? You've heard and listened to this show and other shows. You've had conversations with your friends about this season. What's the most insane, completely whack job reaction to this season? My number one is anybody that would suggest that they made a mistake, or that Jaden isn't who we thought he was, or that, others, New England in particular, got the star of the draft. That by the way, is a reasonable debate watching Drake May this year. I'm certainly not going to discount those of you that really like Drake May before the 2024 draft and are basking in that, afterglow in his second year, because he didn't do it in his first year. And normally they don't. What happened last year was not normal with our quarterback. That's very unusual, as we know. Greatest rookie season in the history of the league for a rookie quarterback, and the furthest a team has ever gone on the back of a rookie quarterback. But I think that, to me, the most insane take is that Jaden Daniels isn't who we thought he was. If you want to say Jaden Daniels is more of a concern because of the injuries this year, and that's a concern moving forward, that's not unreasonable. If you want to say, I do think that maybe the Patriots are going to end up with the best of that group, that's not unreasonable. It's not. I mean, it's very possible that they'll both be great. I'm talking about kind of the extreme of Yeah, year 2, major slump, not the guy we thought he was. Why do I think that's the most insane take? Because he has barely played. He's played 5.5 of the 11 games. So he's played exactly half of the games. It'll be less than half after the next game, we're pretty sure. Denver seems like a stretch for him to be back for that game. It's not impossible for him to be back the following week against Minnesota. Week 1, he was fine in that game. Yeah, there were a couple of misses here and there, but he was fine in the game. And week 1's always a head fake. If you don't believe that, do you know who lost in week 1? The Patriots to the Raiders at home. Week 1 just as a head fake. When he came back after the injury against the Packers, he was lights out against the Chargers after, shaking off a little bit of rust after being out for a few weeks. Lights out. That was Jaden Daniels from last year against a pretty good defensive team on the road, and they blew out the Chargers 27-10. And then, there were some rough moments when he didn't have his guys out there. He just didn't have his team on the field. So that's one of the reasons. This is more just I want. It's not that I want to see it, because I believe we will see it. And even if we don't, it wouldn't deter me about what I think about next year. But one of the reasons I really want to see him back on the field, as long as it's with Terry, maybe with Noah Brown, with health at tight end, with the offensive line continuing to play at a decent level, decent to better than decent level, and be healthy. It's not everybody they had last year, but I think overall it's basically a better group because of the offensive line. And I want to see that, and I want it to sort of, seep into those that actually have questions about Jaden Daniels, that, okay, healthy, has some guys back, isn't throwing to Tay Martin or Robbie Chosen or Treylon Burks, even though Burks was kind of impressive in that game last week or 2 weeks ago, Chris Moore, et cetera. And look, the offense is starting to look like it did last year. Now, it's possible he comes back and he's rusty in the first game, and the defense is so bad that the game gets out of way. There's lots of possibilities, but I'd like to see what that looks like. But of kind of the overreactionary, recency bias, all of that stuff, the crazy reactions to this season that has gone badly. What's the most insane to you guys? 301-230-0980. Some of you believe all three of what John Z referenced. You think everybody should go. And that's fine. But of the sort of more calm, reasonable people out there, which of, the things you've heard about this team this year do you consider to be the most completely out of the world insane? To me, it's the Jaden talk. And I have to say, of the three biggies, I think that's the least amount. I think if you said biggest concern areas pie chart, I think Peters would be 1, Quinn would be 2, Jaden would be 3. Among those that have at least one concern and are ready to kind of declare that they got it wrong on Peters, that they got it wrong on Quinn, or they got it wrong on Daniels. I think of the people that feel like at least one of those areas they've gotten it wrong, the most would be Peters, followed by Quinn, followed by Jaden. To me, though, the question is, which is the most just out of whack response to this season that you've heard? And maybe you've got one that isn't in one of those three areas. To me, it's anybody at this point, after watching what we watched last year, that would question that Jaden Daniels isn't as good as we saw last year. Like they got it wrong. The injury thing, justifiable. I want to emphasize the concern about injuries moving forward. That is not unreasonable. The belief that Drake May is going to be as good as or better and is going to be the true star of that class, that's not unreasonable to me. It isn't. I think there's a really good chance both end up being superstar quarterbacks. We know that only one of the two has actually played a superstar season in its entirety. Although Drake May's heading for that. I mean, he is one of the front runners for the MVP. And last year, Jaden Daniels had an MVP-esque kind of a season. It was just a bit more crowded at the top with Lamar and Josh Allen, et cetera, and Saquon Barkley, right? There were just three otherworldly performances last year, whereas this year, the otherworldly performances are less. I mean, unless you want to say Jonathan Taylor at this point. But Drake May's good. So there we go. 301-230-0980. Max, I want to hear your response when we come back. What's the most insane take on this season you've heard so far? It could be on this show. It could be on another show. It could be within your friend group. It could be whatever, wherever you got it from. For me, it's anybody that has written me, called. My friend last week, I read the text. He wanted to trade Jaden. We talked about that. That's the most insane for me. My eyes did not deceive me. I know what I watched last year. I watched an elite level quarterback season. The only one we've had here since 1991, an elite level quarterback season. I wouldn't even say RG3's 2012 was an elite level quarterback season. It was an exciting season. It was productive, and he was awesome, but it wasn't as overall elite as Jaden's was last year. No, I'm not going to call any of Kirk's seasons here elite. His 2016 was absurd, and it was record-breaking in a lot of different ways, franchise-wise, but I wouldn't call anything, as much as I love him, I wouldn't call anything that he's ever done in his career elite level. High level, yes. Elite level, no. 301-230-0980. Phone lines open. The most insane take you've heard. The biggest overreaction out of, whack take you've heard anywhere during this 3-8 season. Phone lines are open. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. John Z, an Eagles fan, wrote in and said the over-the-top reaction to the situation, listening to you guys all season long, is crazy because it's beyond anyone's control. He said, you had a caller the other day that with a straight face said that Mariota is as good as Jaden Daniels. LOL. You had a caller last week that thought Dan Quinn was a horrible choice and needs to go. There was another day where a caller said Adam Peters was the problem. And even after you listed about 10 new players beyond Jaden Daniels that he brought in last year to help the team nearly go to the Super Bowl, he just ignored you and said the drafts suck. I think I remember that call. On the drafts for your audience, for your audience, Howie Roseman is one of the best to ever do it. His 2019 and 2020 drafts overall were terrible, and they went to the Super Bowl in 2022. It's you have to wait years. Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, one of the all-time first round within one pick, misses. Yeah. Daniels is the real deal. That's where it all starts. He writes he's barely played, and you guys want everybody fired. It's entertaining, but it's so WIP in Philadelphia. WIP, the longtime Philadelphia sports talk station in Philadelphia, and it is entertaining to listen to when you're up there. All of our NFL discussion on this show is presented by Paramount Plus. Now streaming on Paramount Plus, it's the return of Landman from Taylor Sheridan, co-creator of Yellowstone. Academy Award winner Billy Bob Thornton is back, and he's so good in this show, featuring Academy Award nominees Demi Moore, Andy Garcia, and Sam Elliott. Landman, new season, now streaming only on Paramount Plus. So the question at 301-230-0980 is, what's the most insane take you've heard this year about this team and this season? I think the three biggies are what John Z pointed out. Adam Peters has to go. Dan Quinn needs to be fired. Jaden, they got the wrong guy. Disappointed. He's not who we thought he was. And even beyond that, some of the takes on Jaden are absurd, which it can be anywhere you heard it within your friend group. I mean, I shared with you a text from my friend last week who thought, he said, I've thought long and hard about this. I think they should trade Jaden Daniels right now. And his overall, basis for saying that was that Jaden's going to be injury prone his whole career, and it's going to be disappointing because of that. Okay, that's not like the most unreasonable take. I mean, but you're not, in my opinion, ever going to think about trading an elite level talent at that position in this league. You just can't do it. You can't. Even if you are concerned about him holding up physically for season after season. I mean, you got to take you got to go down that path and just hope that doesn't become the issue and protect against that issue. For me, that's the number one insane take. Those of you that suggest that what you saw last year was fake and that really he's just not that good, yeah. Or especially the Mariota stuff. All due respect, because I do love Marcus Mariota as a backup. I've always liked Mariota in the league as kind of a low-end, or mid-range NFL starter. This is the perfect system for him. But, yeah, no, they're not really comparable. 301-230-0980. Max, what's the wildest, most insane reaction to this season you've heard?
I mean, it's tough, especially sitting in this chair, because I hear so many calls of so many takes of so many people with some of the wildest things you've ever heard. But one surprising thing that I've seen out of this fan base so far this season is how quickly and how angrily they have turned on Terry McLaurin. Think about how long this guy has A, stuck it out, B, played well with a slew of awful quarterbacks. You don't think he is looking at his situation being like, this is the best time I've ever been able to play in this town in my career. And he's sticking it out. Well, I mean, the injury thing is tough. And I understand wanting to get back and take your time and be able to not have this be an issue in the future. So just how quickly and how much vitriol there is surrounding the Terry McLaurin situation, and them fan base, people in the fan base wanting to get rid of him with haste. That's my big thing.
See, I mean, I get.
I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, there's been there's been a level of reaction to Terry that has surprised me a bit. I also think that, the only time we've seen him this year, basically, was the Kansas City game, and he played such a Terry game.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lights out, take the game over, but he had the incredible, toe tapping touchdown, the big time catch down the sideline. I mean, he had 2 catches that essentially got overturned on challenges because the refs didn't think that he caught him. I mean, if he had been on the receiving end of the deep ball from Mariota on Sunday to Chris Moore at the end of the game, Washington would have won the game. That would have been Terry's catch. That's what he does well. Yeah, I mean, the Terry thing is definitely an interesting thing. I think that, and I commented on this, during the summer as it went on. I think that he just got a bit too talkative.
Yeah.
There was the Eastern Motors commercial, 45-minute dissertation that just was way too defensive. The constantly, showing up. I think there was a lot, and I think fans understand contracts so much more now. Contract negotiations so much more now in today's NFL than we did even 10, 15 years ago. And what he was asking for, even the most ardent, even the most devoted of Terry fans knew, yeah, dude, you're not Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson.
Right.
You're just not, especially when you're about to enter your 30s. So, yeah, look, the team got the deal they wanted. Terry lost the deal, and then he got hurt. And it sucks that he got hurt, because there's no doubt that it's one thing to just lose him, but then to lose him and everybody else made it, 10x the problem offensively. All right, 301-230-0980. Let's start with Rudy in Glen Burnie. Rudy, the most, insane / wildest reaction that you've heard to this season so far.
Hey, good morning. I would have said the same thing. The fan base just turned, after going so far on last year, getting so far, that they just turned on the whole team. Now they question everything. They want to. Now I question some things that the general manager did, like you told us yesterday. I think yesterday or the day before, you talked about Forbes doing so well in Los Angeles. Why they let Forbes go? What do we need right now? Some cornerback. Somebody.
Was anybody in this town for keeping Emmanuel Forbes? I'm not saying he can't answer to us. I'm not saying that. He needs to get it right. We don't need to get it right. Understood. But that's one of those where everybody, that was a Rivera pick. He stinks. They messed up by not picking Christian Gonzalez, which, by the way, is true. I think at this point now, 3 years after the fact, we can say that. But there's nobody in this town that had any issue with him moving on from Emmanuel Forbes.
I believe that because he was a light cornerback, but now he's progressing, and things like that. We don't have any wide receivers. Why didn't you keep Zacchaeus? Why didn't you hold on to
I think
him?
they wanted to keep Zacchaeus. I think they wanted to keep Zacchaeus, FYI. I think Zacchaeus just took the deal in Chicago for whatever reason. Maybe he thought the opportunity was better. I don't know. That's a mystery. I'm going to find that out, by the way. I'm going to find out exactly, because I know over the spring and summer, Zacchaeus was, along with Mariota and a couple of others, Wagner, Ertz, in terms of the players, he was on their priority list.
All right. Thanks for taking my call, Kevin.
Yeah, sure, Rudy. Thank you. Let's go to J Farms. J Farms, the most insane, wildest take that you've heard about this season so far from our fan base is what?
Listen, I talk to a lot of Redskins, Commanders fans, and, I always try to pose the question, and I have to actually pose the question to you, because I wanted to say something. Now I have to shift a little bit. Let me ask you this question. If the New York Jets, you're the general manager, the New York Jets came to you and said, after the season, I'm going to give you 3 first rounds plus Justin Fields for number 5. Are you pulling the trigger?
No.
You're not
Would
pulling
you?
the trigger?
Would you?
I would actually think about it. You know, here's why. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to tell you because
See,
it's
here
assets.
comes one of my. I'm not killing you yet. I want to hear the whole thing. I want to hear your justification. But this is to me an insane take. But go ahead.
No, it's not. I'm gonna tell you why it's not.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you why it's not. Because first and foremost, you're looking at the Jets where the Jets is always picking up top. They're always 1 through 5, somewhere around that realm. So you're gonna always get a great pick with that scenario. For one, and the reason I asked you because, like I said, it's something to think about. A shrewd general manager is gonna think 3 first rounds. Wow, they're giving up the house. They're giving you the house now. Let me ask you this.
That's not the house, by the way.
Guy.
You'd get a lot more for Jaden if you made him available than 3 firsts and Justin Fields. Just FYI. You get a hell of a lot more.
No. The history. Hold on. 1 second. Again, here's the thing. We know. Let me ask you another question because it's leading up to something. If you know what you know, November the 19th, you know what you know today. At the second pick, do you pick Drake May or number 5?
Number 5.
Are you serious?
100%.
What you know history as far as the damages?
100%.
100%. So listen, and I understand. Listen, I'm a big
That's
fan
not.
of
By the way, I don't think
electric.
that's an unreasonable position. That if you're a Drake May guy and you're watching him this year and we're living in the moment, it's not insane to say, you know what? I think May's going to end up being the best of the group of the 2024. I don't, but I don't think you're crazy for saying that. I think you're crazy for saying that you would trade Jaden to the Jets for 3 1s and Justin Fields. Have you watched Justin Fields this year?
I didn't say I do. No. You're playing semantics of words. No, here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if they came, you see, that's assets. You're dealing with assets. And again, you want a player. See, the thing with Drake May is, we can't say that, Drake is going to get injured. We can't say that. We have to say, okay, he looks like he's going to be a player that's going to play for 10 to 15 years, compared to a player that is, again, the jury's out on his injury. If he's going to be injury prone, we don't know.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, he just vanished off the line.
Oh. That we got the gist of it though. That's that's a good call. The Drake May Jaden thing, I don't have a problem with those of you that are convinced that Drake May is going to be the better of the two. I can't imagine anybody thinking though Drake May is going to be the better of the two because Jaden's not very good and Drake May is. No, Jaden's very good. He's an elite level talent. We saw that last year. It wasn't fake. Okay? That was not, you don't get 20 games in a rookie season at that level and say, yeah, that was all bogus. That was all good fortune. It was all good luck. All of that. Especially when you consider his last 2 games against the best defense in recent modern NFL history were unbelievable, especially the game here in December against Philly. But yeah, just so you know, so first of all, if Adam Peters ever said, we're going to make Jaden Daniels available, like it got out Adam Schefter sometime, in the offseason, said Washington has taken calls on Jaden Daniels. Can you imagine? First of all, just in NFL circles, I promise you, immediately a massive red flag would go up with every other team because they would be, has he lost his mind? He's actually going to listen to offers for Jaden Daniels. Well, then something has to be wrong with him. There has to be, an underlying long-term knee injury that's never going to get better. So there would be a massive red flag. It would be unprecedented, right? Never would you have a quarterback of his talent and elite level talent available via trade going into his 3rd year. It's never happened before. And the reason is no one would believe the trading team that he's okay. But let's just say you put that aside and say teams actually would believe, Washington, for whatever reason, they can't afford him. They don't want to pay, whatever it is. What would you get back for him? 3 1s would be the minimum. I don't think you can trade more than 3 1s. You'd get multiple 2s, multiple 3s, and maybe a player or two. The only trade in the history of the game that might equal it or surpass it would be the Herschel Walker trade. And I'm being totally serious. It would be absolutely an unprecedented opportunity. It's never going to happen, obviously. You know, I told you guys last week, they're laughing out there at some of the reaction to Jaden, especially some of the videos and some of the breakdowns. They're like, in terms of the Seattle game, do they have any clue how many routes were run incorrectly by receivers in the picture it was giving them against one of the best defenses in the NFL? Like, please. They should not have kept him in the game, though, against Seattle. That is true. Like, do me a favor, learn from that, and let's protect the organization's number one asset. But we just got a call that, to me, is an insane take. Insane. Trade him for 3 1s. Justin Fields, I liked Justin Fields at one point. I thought, he's worth it. Like, that last few games he played at Ohio State, came back after the year after he really looked terrible against Clemson, then beat Clemson in the semis. But good God, he right now at this point in his career, he can't do it. Can't do it. Maybe that'll change with a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan, off season or two, but he can't do it. Let's go to Anthony in DC. Anthony, the most insane, crazy take you've heard about our team and its season through 11 games.
So like I was telling Max, your boy is entertaining as hell, but Mark and Largo.
What about Mark and Largo?
Basically anything Mark says is over the top. His number one theory of Adam Peters has to go is beyond. I mean, it's only been 2 seasons.
It's not even been 2 seasons.
You got it. Well, you get my drift.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you got to give him at least 5 years. After 5 years, things don't look right. Okay, you start having discussions. But he's taking a trash roster. Let me remind people of something. It's been 34 years of garbage since 1991, where there's been a blip here and a blip there of success. But other than that, it's been all trash. So every other year we talk about, well, we need a GM. We need a GM to be here for a while to change everything around. Well, we got a GM. So let's give the man time to actually do his job. We complained about Rivera being here. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, which turned out to be true. He didn't know what he was doing, but he was here. Jay Gruden got extended because we kept a revolving door of head coaches. It didn't work out. We got a whole new regime. Give it time to marinate. This isn't easy.
It's too reasonable, Anthony. It's too reasonable.
Well, the
5 years though. Can I push back on the 5 years? I don't think there are 5-year plans in the NFL anymore. I think that if next year ended up being another terrible season, and this time it wasn't about the players they were putting on the field that came off the street, I think there'd be a lot of discussion about it. I'm not saying that I would agree with it, but I think at that point, after 3 seasons, it's okay to have that conversation. I think 5.
Whoa.
Look, it's incredibly patient, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just not sure he would get 5 total years to turn it around if next year went badly too.
Let me push back on that. The reason I say 5 is you can't account for years like this. This is a total aberration.
I agree.
Basically, the whole roster has been decimated. So you're already behind the 8 ball with roster building because of what you lucked into and trying to maintain that, if not push forward with it. So now you have to go back to ground zero and rebuild from the ground up. So you already have a lost year, basically. So
Yeah.
that's why I say
Okay.
you gotta have
Yeah.
5 years. But
Yeah, I hear you.
your boy Mark and Largo, he come with some wild stuff sometimes.
I can't even remember all of
Entertaining as
Mark's
hell.
takes. But we're not going to have caller on
Entertaining as
caller
hell.
crime on this show.
No,
Mark and
it's
Largo's
not.
entertaining,
It's not
as
crime.
you are, Anthony. You're just a little bit more coachable and reasonable. You and I think similarly. Doesn't mean that Mark and Largo. Oh, Mark just got on the line, so we'll talk about. We'll let Mark weigh in here shortly. Thanks. I gotta get to a break. Joe, Billy, William, Sean, Mike, Mark in Largo, Nick in DC. Everybody stay on hold. The most insane, the wildest take you've heard about our team this year. Adam Peters needs to go. Dan Quinn needs to go. Jaden Daniels, they got it wrong. That to me is the number one. The discussion, like where people are like, maybe Marcus Mariota is the guy, or maybe we need to trade him. Like we just had a caller say. To me, that's the most insane. Simply put, this is the hardest thing to find in sports. An elite level talent at the most important position in the sport and maybe in sports altogether. And after 33 years in the wilderness, they have him. And after one of the greatest rookie debuts in the history of the game, an injury-riddled season to both him and everything around him, the fact that people actually have thought about bailing on him is insane. 301-230-0980, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show. We stream it on the Team 980's YouTube page. When you get there, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button for us. It helps us out a lot. What's the most insane take? What's the wildest take you've heard about our team this year? You know, we've heard it from all corners, probably all shows. Adam Peters has to go. Dan Quinn's got to go. Jaden Daniels was, last year was a fluke. He's really not that good. What's the most insane take? To me, it's all about Jaden. Any of the discussion about Jaden, like Mariota, or let's trade him. We just had a caller, last segment bring it up. I don't think it's crazy to be concerned about his injuries moving forward. I don't think it's crazy to say you don't think he'll be the best of the class. I think it's crazy to say that you don't think he's got a chance to be the best of the class after what we saw last year. Again, this year, impossible to evaluate, in my opinion. There just hasn't been an opportunity to truly evaluate anything other than maybe the kicker, because least affected by injuries. But didn't Matt Gay miss a game? He missed a game, didn't he?
Yeah,
he was injured for a game.
Wisnowski was the punter. Who was he's the kicker. He just made it for the Texans Matthew Wright. That's who he signed.
Matthew Wright did he kick against the Chiefs maybe?
I think it was the game prior.
Which meant only one extra point, no field goal attempts.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our guy Joe in Springfield. Joe, most insane take, the wildest take, reaction to this season you've heard so far. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. And by the way, first off, I'm not riding in an elevator, so you'll be able to hear my voice this time at least. So sorry about that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, anyway,
yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
So, the funny thing about this, Kevin, is that the fan base, so most of this fan base, whether it's longtime fans or bandwagon fans, they're overreacting on this. And you know what? Injuries happen in the NFL. But if people are telling me that literally 10 months ago, some people, the fans I know, are saying that was luck that we were in the NFC Championship game. Well, if it was luck, then why were we there? Injuries happen, and you know something? The Jaden Daniels injury, and by the way, I would be concerned about injuries moving forward. But the fact that some fans are saying that Jaden Daniels was not the answer and he's RG3 2.0, Kevin, there's one big difference between Jaden Daniels and RG3. You don't hear Jaden Daniels talk at all during this time while he's been out. They have not said a word to him. He hasn't even talked to the media. And one other thing that has not been talked about much, previous ownership would have been all over this interfering. You don't hear from Josh Harris about anything involving Peters, Quinn, or Jaden Daniels. And that is the key right there. But the fan base, it happens. And Kevin, I don't know if this fan base is still remembering how you and I were like longtime fans, had to go through that 25-year nightmare, and yet we still came out okay because look where we were. We're still believing in this team, and we believe in what we've done so far. Yes, injuries happen as part of the sport, but if you're telling me that people are going to turn away on this team just like that after 10 months, you're crazy. Not you're crazy, but the fan base is crazy.
Last year, in most situations, last year should have bought them some goodwill, especially considering the number one reason this season has gone the way it's gone, which is completely out of their control. Other than having Jaden in the game at the end against Seattle, which was within their control, but when you're putting Chris Moore and Robbie Chosen and Jacoby Jones and Tay Martin and, the list goes on and on of all the players that weren't even anywhere near this organization for much of the offseason that have had to play, this is not something that I could hang them on. There's nothing reasonable about going after any of them after the season they had last year. It would be one thing if they came out, they were completely healthy, and they're getting beat by 3 touchdowns 4 weeks in a row with all of their guys out there. That didn't happen. That's what makes it almost impossible to truly evaluate. Thanks, Joe. Let's go to William in Austin, Texas. William, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how are you? I'm good,
William.
Long-time listener, very first-time caller, so it's a pleasure to chat with you. And
thank you.
I agree with you as far as on-field product, that Jaden's number one. And anyone who wants to go back to wandering around the Sahara, looking at mirage after mirage, is absolutely crazy. But even for me, I'm 31. I think it's a little bit deeper, a little bit wider than just striking gold on the quarterback. This is really the first time in my life that we have exactly what we were craving for all those years, which is a professional organization with the correct structure, with the GM with the autonomy to actually implement his plan and bring in good people without a meddling owner. I mean, I was on Monday, I saw a clip going around of a Cleveland sports dog, and the poor guy, you know, they were talking about Shador and Dylan Gabriel and all that, and he used the phrase suspend reality 4 or 5, 6 times.
Oh, really?
And that was
yeah,
us.
that was yeah, that's what we said. Yeah.
That was us not that long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
Adam Peters, you know, has not only brought in quality people, he's turned this organization into a respectable operation. And if you had told me that in a 9-month period, we would go from the beat writers having a stakeout in front of Topgolf to the NFC Championship game last January, I would have lost a lot of money on it. And I think, you know, unfortunately what happens is you have a year like last season and expectations get so wild.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing that anyone should do right now is go back and listen to Adam Peters' intro press conference where he's asked about the current state of the roster. That long pause that he took before answering. I mean, just go look at Seattle's 4-year drafting stretch between the entire time Ron Rivera was here. It's incredible how many actual, you know, blue chip or borderline blue chip contributors they have. And then look at what we had during that 4-year run. We got a little lucky with Cosme. Ron did a couple, you know, decent things here and there as far as player development and drafting. But for the most part, I mean, I'm going to take an example like Quan Martin. You know, Quan Martin seems like a decent player, but I think to the average fan, to our fan base, we evaluate him that he is, you know, truly a second-round pick and should be developing as such. We have no idea with Ron and the Marty gang if he was really a second-round talent. It's incredibly difficult to evaluate. He may have been a 4th-round talent, but Ron and Marty decided to draft him early. That's just one example. I think, you know, one of the best things, I don't want to get
what
too
if
carried
they
away,
end
but
up
one of the
getting
best
what if
things-
they end up being right about Emmanuel Forbes? That'd be hysterical. Because he's
And I
certainly
think
playing
that
at a
is-
pretty high level right now. Great, you know,
He is,
perfect
and I
team,
think-
really good defense in front of him helps.
Yes, certainly. And I think one of the most astute points you've made over the years is you've got to watch the other teams in the league. I mean, I do my best to watch as many games as possible. You have to get outside the fandom bubble and watch the other teams. And the talent level that Peters and Quinn, et cetera, were working with starting with last year, it's just apples and oranges. I mean, you know, there was a little bit of talent, but I think Peters, anyone who wants to write off Adam Peters when in a year and a half, essentially, he's built a respectable organization. I mean, just look at the, you know, the report or the reporting that Ben Standing has done over the past year and the amount of high marks that Peters get around the league.
Yeah, his
I mean, we were the
agent
laughing
survey.
stock 3 years ago.
Yeah, the whole thing's
exactly.
flipped. The whole thing's flipped.
It's
No
just
doubt. William, thanks for the call.
unbelievable.
I got to get to a break because we're here at the end of the hour, but really good call. And of course, we had to suspend reality to have conversations about this team for 20-something years. We don't have to do that anymore. And by the way, the reality this year is that the team that we saw last year hasn't been out there this year. That's why they're 3-8. We'll continue. I see everybody on hold. You want to weigh in? We'll let you do it next. Barry's Verluga will join us at 11:30. There's some reporting, I guess I would call it reporting, from ESPN on Jaden Daniels' return. I will get to that here in the next 15 minutes. It's not a breaking news thing. It's part of an overall NFL column, and it was just a little bit of a tidbit, and I'm going to read it to you guys here shortly. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Off of the email that I read to open up the show from John Z, who's an Eagles fan, says listening to your show and just other shows everywhere around our town, it's felt like he was in Philadelphia again. The overreaction to the season, he writes, just over the top reactionary to a situation that is beyond anyone's control. He identified a caller who said with a straight face that Mariota was as good as Jaden Daniels. Another caller that thought Dan Quinn was a horrible choice, needs to go. Another that said Adam Peters was the problem, he needs to go. Et cetera, et cetera. He pointed out some, thing. By the way, somebody texted me, he said, the 2019 draft for Howie Roseman was the Jalen Hurts draft. Yeah, I mean, actually, John Z said that the 2019 and 2020 drafts were two terrible drafts by Howie Roseman. So let's go back and look at them. 2019, 2020. Yeah, 2019, nobody's left. Miles Sanders is still in the league. Andre Dillard was the number one pick. Where is he playing? I don't even know where he's playing. That was 2019. And then 2020 was Jalen Hurts, not 2019. 2020 was Jalen Reagor. Oh, my God. One pick before Justin Jefferson.
Devastating.
Then Hurts, and then basically most of the rest of the picks are not really significant players anywhere in the league right now. They had a lot of picks that year, too. So, yeah. All right. Back to the phone lines. Craziest take, wackiest take, most insane take that you've heard about our team this year from friends, from shows like mine, from anywhere. For me, it's really simple. It's like any of the talk about Jaden Daniels being the wrong guy. Again, I'm totally open-minded to the people that are concerned that he'll just never be healthy enough, or to those that believe, yeah, Jaden's really good and he's going to be a good quarterback, but I just think Drake May is going to be a better, quarterback. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But the idea that some have, presented like, hey, man, look at Mariota. He's just as good. I'd leave him out there. Or they got to figure out a solution. Last year was a complete and utter fluke. That's insane to me. Insane. Max, kind of focused in on the Terry McLaurin reaction, just the turning of the fan base on Terry. I don't think I have a good gauge. And doing this typically leads to having a decent gauge on fan thought. I think it's split. I think the Terry thing is split. I think there are people that are really pissed at him and the way he and his agent handled it. And then I think there are those that just believe the team butchered it 7 ways to Sunday and led to all of this. I feel like it's split on Terry.
I feel like that's
personally.
I think the side that is against him has been very vocal in their turning, so I think that's probably part of it as well.
All right, let's go to Mark. Oh, wait a minute. Did Mark and Largo drop?
Disappeared.
Oh, my God.
I know.
Mark, I was going to kick off the 11 a.m. hour with you. He disappeared. Let's go to Mike and Frederick. Mike, go ahead. The most insane, crazy take about our team that you've heard.
Hey, Kevin, this has to do with Jaden and Drake May. But first, I'd like to give you credit. I know some people have talked about it, but you were the first one on Jaden. 2 years ago during the fall, I listened to you and Denton, and you guys would talk all fall how he was shooting up from a first rounder to, how high in the draft. So you were on him first. You were the first one I heard talk about it.
Well, anybody that was watching LSU, quite honestly, in the 2023 season, the thing that was surprising about Daniels, and I remember saying this early in the season that year, like he was projected second round, third round. I'm like, I guarantee you he's going to be top half of the first round when all is said and done. And then as the season went on, it was like there's no chance that he's not number 2 or 3, But everybody else picked up on that. People that follow college football understood what he was capable of. But, remember this. I think it's really interesting every year with the NFL draft. I'm going to let you make your point. A lot of the NFL guys, they don't watch college football, and you can tell that they don't with some of their early takes on the draft. And then they get, immersed in highlight tapes and, whatever they do to do their research. And I think sometimes the context of some of these games is lost when you just go and watch highlight reels to prepare for the draft. Jaden was an unbelievable badass competitor in these games with no defense at all. One of the worst defenses in the country that year. And he kept giving them a chance to win week in and week out with one just otherworldly performance after another. But go ahead. What's the most insane take you've heard about this year?
Okay, tell me what you think of this. You're old enough to relate to this. Jaden was the number 2 pick. Drake May was the number 3. 40 years earlier in the NBA draft, and this was all predicated on this person said Drake May will win MVP. 1984.
Sam Bowie.
Sam Bowie versus Michael Jordan. They said Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Sam Bowie, Michael Jordan. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't think we got Sam Bowie. Is that what you're saying? By the way, Olajuwon was number 1 overall. You still would go back and you would draft Mike, obviously number 1 overall. But Olajuwon,
it was 2. It was 2 versus 3, just like Jaden.
Yeah. Right. But I was just pointing out, Olajuwon at number 1 is going to end up having, I think, a greater career than Caleb Williams is going to have. That's just my guess.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, but Jaden's not Sam Bowie. Sam Bowie never, ever had a season like Jaden had last year. And I don't think Drake May, all due respect, because I've been blown away impressed with him, watching him this year. I don't think he's Jordan.
I agree. That's why I think it's crazy. I just wanted to, let you hear it.
Yeah. All right, Mike, thanks. Really appreciate the call. Let's go to Nick in D.C. Nick, the wildest, most insane reaction to this season so far that you've heard.
I'm with you. It's the people that are turning on Jaden Daniels already. I mean, by all accounts, he had what was considered the greatest rookie season of all time. And that guy who called about trading 3 firsts and with Justin Fields.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just insane. It actually I was telling Matt, it kind of bums me out when I hear fans talk like that. And like you've talked about before, the PTSD of this fan base is pretty real.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It really is a real thing. And I mean, we spent 30 years looking for a quarterback of this caliber, and now we have him, and people are turning on him already. I mean, literally 30, about 30 years, wouldn't you say, looking for someone like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, 100%. Here's the thing, just to consider, Nick, for a moment. Let's say he comes back and plays the final 5 games of the year. Let's say it doesn't look great, in part because, he's got rust and he's not, maybe he's still got that brace on. I don't know if he'll come back with the brace or not. Maybe he's still got, Robbie Chosen and Jacoby Jones, although I think they released him. They'll bring him back, I'm sure. And he's got those guys running around trying to make plays against Brian Flores' defense or Philadelphia's defense. I mean, if you think that it's gotten, that it's been bad, imagine that he doesn't look like he did last year in that context. People don't care about the context. They just look at what they're watching and they're like, well, he must suck.
Exactly. And as far as Drake May, he has looked great this year, but he hasn't done so far what Jaden did last year. Let's see what he does in the playoffs. Yet. I mean, I am a Drake May fan. I'm not sold that he's better than Jaden by any stretch of the means.
No, me neither.
I really
he's got incredible. He's incredibly smooth and super poised. Like there is
He is.
something. He seems to have the it factor. I would say that, but it's early. Yeah, they haven't played one playoff game yet.
Early, yeah. He hasn't. I mean, he hasn't led his team to the championship game like James. I mean, but
Right.
it's everything. Circumstances are different. But I have been impressed with him. I would still take Jaden over Drake May at this point. And I think anybody that's turning on Quinn or AP is also nuts because they took a 4-13 team to the NFC Championship game in 1 year, and that's pretty commendable. I don't want these guys going anywhere. And
thanks for
having
call.
me on, Kevin.
Yeah, appreciate it. Let's go to Billy in Chantilly. Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, I think one of the most good morning shocking things of the year is that my favorite sports broadcaster would be reading an email from some patronizing Eagles fan who'd be crying in his diaper if it wasn't for Nick Foles. They don't even have a quarterback themselves. The only thing funner than watching the Commanders fans.
Wait a minute. They've won. They've been in 2 Super Bowls with the quarterback they have right now, and won one.
That's right. Listen, that Super Bowl win with Jalen Hurts was a hoax. Okay, that was a total farcical hoax win, and it'll be struck from the record someday. You'll see that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything constructive and productive?
They got quarterback envy. Yeah, I do have something constructive to say. You let these callers babble on and on. I got a lot of constructive things to say, and that's this.
Well, hit one quickly. Hit one quickly. You're on the clock.
As a human being, you have to learn in all situations. And what we've learned this season is Adam Peters let his ego affect the team and the way he negotiated a contract. Quinn has delegated his identity to his assistant coaches. That needs to get fixed.
Okay, so those are the most insane takes you've heard, or those are your takes.
And Cliff needs to straighten up his offensive coordination game plan to get his quarterback out of trouble from getting all these injuries.
Look, the reason I let others babble on and on sometimes is because they're actually explaining their answer to the question that's been asked to the callers. Other than saying that the most insane thing you've heard this year is me reading an email from an Eagles fan, what about with respect to our team? What's the most insane, crazy take you've heard about our team this year?
Without a doubt, trading Jaden Daniels for Justin Fields. The Jets would have more wins than Justin Fields would have completions. Jaden Daniels is the best thrower and seer of the field I've ever seen. Period. So let's kick this.
Good job. Good job. I had to get you to focus, but there you go. Yeah. Appreciate you answering the question.
Yeah. All right.
Billy.
You're the best.
Bye. I'll talk to you soon. Let's go to DC. DC, go ahead.
Great day, Kevin. Man, it's been a minute, brother. I've been very busy, but how are you?
I'm well. DC, how are you?
That's good. I'm excellent, brother. But you made an excellent point, and I just want to follow up on that. I think the most outlandish take is the people not acknowledging that Jaden did what you said in college, and I believe that's why Adam Peters and Dan Quinn wanted to draft him, because his ability to carry a team. But what they failed to realize in the NFL, you got to use the running game to help him. So he's played excellent without a good defense, but the only part is the offense hasn't helped him. And I think it's outlandish for people to think that he's not a good quarterback, because he's doing it with a lack of, and also this year his offensive help got hurt. You know, most of it. The O-line's pretty much been healthy, but Cosme wasn't there at the beginning. But that's what I would like to say, brother. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, DC. Good to hear your voice. Rob in Maryland. Rob, the most insane, wildest, crazy take about our team you've heard this year is what?
Most insane take is that individuals saying right now that the team would still be 9-2 if everybody was healthy. I think is an overreaction to last year. I think, well, when you speak to fans, they all say, "Hey, we would only have probably lost 2 games," because everyone's saying,
"Oh, I haven't heard that."
12-5.
I haven't heard that.
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good one because that. Are you there, Rob? Did I lose you? Where's Rob?
Rob's still here.
I'm still on.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm on.
Continue.
Yeah, and then just a follow-up to what you were saying about Philly. Just think about how insane it would be. The last 5 years, they could have had Justin Jefferson and Micah Parsons, along with what they have right now.
They traded to the Cowboys to allow them to draft Micah Parsons.
Exactly.
Wait a minute. Was it Philly who made that trade or the Giants? I'm forgetting right now.
It was Philly. It was Philly, right? It was Philly.
Yeah.
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 So they, with the team that they have now, they could have.
Look, Howie Roseman's done a phenomenal. An acquisition that was at the trade deadline. He may be better at doing that than anything. Some of the additions he tends to make, either before the season or at the trade deadline, for sure. All right, thanks, Rob. We'll finish up with Kevin in Virginia. Kevin, go ahead. Most insane take you've heard about our team all year is what?
Yeah, this isn't new, but Quinn's not a good coach, and the Super Bowl with the Patriots proved it in advance, and he's really not good for the long term. But can I have a take of my own? This is where they made their mistake. They miscalculated that we were closer to the Super Bowl than we were. It wasn't a fluke last year. I think it was a little lucky we got to the championship game. But some of these trades for Lattimore, even for Tunsil, and we gave up the future. We gave up several picks because we thought, we need a couple of pieces, and we're going to be in the Super Bowl. I don't think it worked that way because they didn't have the depth, like the Eagles have, and they miscalculated on those moves, I think, and it set us back. These trades, thinking we're going to be in
Max,
the Super Bowl.
did we lose Kevin?
And that's
I
where
can't hear him
I
anymore.
think the headlines and all the hype hurt us. They didn't stick to their plan like I thought they should have done. And they made these trades, and the trades really weren't worth it. And I think that set us back.
Well, I disagree with you on Tunsil. It's very hard to find a top-tier left tackle, and they got that one. That's a 10 out of 10 in terms of what we've seen so far. I totally agree with you on Lattimore. I was dead wrong. I thought it was worth the gamble. I will say this, because one of the things we talked about in the offseason, and I keep this list in front of me every day, when I talked about this is window number one. The next, window number one is Jaden's rookie year. So 2026, 2025, 2026, and maybe even part of 2027. You have to, if you're going to go for it, you got to, and I wrote it down about Lattimore. I'm like, you got to figure out Lattimore. If there's a concern, whether it's, culture fit wise, injury wise, playing wise, don't fear cutting your losses before they lead to more losses is what I wrote. You've earned the right to make a mistake because there was enough goodwill in this past off season that if they had legitimate concern about Lattimore and they thought they really messed up that trade, people would have forgiven. They wouldn't have forgotten, but they would have forgiven off, an NFC championship season. And I think they rolled the dice hoping more than thinking with Lattimore, and it didn't work out. To me, that's the one deal, the one act or otherwise that Adam Peters has made that you can point to that say this one was a reach because of his injury history going into that trade. It did not work out. It was a major blunder, as it turns out.
The only reason I say Tunsil is we're 3-8. There are lumps there and saved the draft picks and built for next year. That's the only reason. I'm sure he's a great player, no doubt. But he hasn't prevented Daniels from getting hurt. It's not his fault that he hasn't got hurt. But quarterbacks are going to get hurt. And they could have on its own. It's just we're 3-8, and here we are, and we haven't improved. Is my point.
Sorry about that last segment. We kind of lost the caller and then lost me briefly, but I think we've got it all together. We'll see. Barry's Verluga joins us right now. Of course, Barry's been a columnist for the Washington Post for 47 years. It seems like it. At Barry Zverluga on X on Twitter. You know, I used something that you wrote last week for a call segment that we could have gone on for hours on. You said in the column last week, you asked the question, is this season a blip or was last year a fluke? So how do you answer that question 11 games into this 3-8 campaign?
You know, I think gun to the head in a binary world, I think this is a blip. And I think that because the question, I still think we think the quarterback problem has been solved. Now, are there issues? Are we going to have questions going into next year about Jaden Daniels' durability? We are. Has he gotten into a rhythm this year, even when he's been on the field? He really hasn't. He hasn't been the same kind of transcendent figure that he was as a rookie in 2024. But I think if I'm going to answer that question, I didn't really answer it in the column. Right. I think it's really the topic that we have to grapple with over the last 6 games of this season and then going into next year. But I think there's too much good evidence to support the idea for me that, like, Dan Quinn's a pretty good leader and Adam Peters is a pretty good judge of talent. Now, can we pick apart their records this year? We absolutely can. And does that bring into question, you know, their choices going forward? Sure. But if you're asking me to answer the question that I posed, I think right now, I think the miserableness of this, 3-8 season is the blip, and that reality is closer to this is probably going to be more regularly a playoff contender than not going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I said, I've said before, and I said it earlier in the show, I think it's almost impossible to evaluate anything about this season other than maybe like a kicker, and they evaluated him and they cut him earlier this week. Things that, have not been impacted by this rash of injuries. Do you agree or disagree?
I do. And I don't, I simultaneously don't want to use injuries as an excuse, but acknowledge how important they are. And I think, Terry is obvious and Jaden Daniels is obvious, but I also think that things like Dietrich Wise, which is an injury that nobody nationally is going to pay any attention to, and then a few weeks later, Dorrance Armstrong, and then, backup defensive ends, you have positions that are completely ravaged. Right. Do I think they mishandled the receiver room a little bit in kind of acting like De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus were, easily replaceable, and they didn't really replace them with players of the same caliber? I think that's a problem. Relying on Noah Brown, who really hasn't been healthy throughout his career, could have, you can pick apart that decision for sure. But you're looking at cornerback, receiver, and pass rusher as rooms that have just been devastated. You don't want to let them off the hook, but you want to acknowledge that it's really, really hard for any team to endure when you're kind of ravaged at specific positions.
Yeah, you just mentioned the area that I would focus in on, and that is, after the obvious, which is not having Jaden and Terry for much of or most of the season. What's the area that losing players hurt them the most this season? I would say what you just focused in on, and you're right, national people aren't even going to mention Dorrance Armstrong, let alone Dietrich Wise. But losing your top 3 defensive ends was devastating for a team that was horrible stopping the run last year and had really focused in the offseason on fixing that problem.
Correct. And I think they were always, if you're talking to us in training camp and we were batting around like pass rush and defensive line, there was not a person who you thought, okay, this guy's going to have a Myles Garrett 15, 18 sack season. Like that character wasn't there. But I think between Armstrong, who I think was on a 13 sack pace, and then Wise, who I thought was really effective as a defensive end, stopping the run, like played football, not pass rusher. I think they probably would have cobbled together a middle of the pack pass rush, and they're just left in a position where they can't even come close to that now. I mean, I did think it was interesting that Dan Quinn, in taking over the defensive play calling responsibilities, like he dialed up a corner blitz that was probably the first, or I don't know, maybe not the first, but like count them on one hand corner blitzes that defense has run as a way to generate some sort of pressure on the quarterback, and it worked against the Dolphins on Sunday in Spain. So you've got to get creative with your play calling because of the personnel that they have. But the players matter. Scheme is only a part of it, and I think when they're down, so I don't want to let injuries, like I keep saying, like define the whole thing. But it just is like it's foolish to not acknowledge that it's such a huge part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, like when people say next man up, I'm like, yeah, that's for coaches and players. We're observers and we opine. I mean, as NFL fans, we understand what happens to teams 99 times out of 100 when you are faced with this kind of season of lost players. And as I've pointed out, and I'm sure you have as well, it's not just that they've lost players, they've lost their best players, their biggest contributors for, either the season or for a significant number of games. It's almost impossible to overcome. We just did, about 45 minutes of calls on basically, you and I have been around here for a while, and we've seen this fan base, go from incredibly rabid and smart and sharp to basically angry, then apathetic, then gone. Then last year, with Snyder being gone and this new regime, people started coming back, not in the same numbers, not by a long shot. But there's very much kind of a recency bias just with sports fans in general. And I asked, what's the craziest take, the most insane take about this team that you've heard? And I'm curious if you have an answer. I don't know how much of it you hear. I take calls every day, so it's a little bit different. But you've got friends, you talk to people. What's the most insane, wildest take that you're like, oh my God, that person's nuts?
Well, I mean, mine would be, and I don't take calls, but I listen to the calls that you guys take. Like, mine would be like Adam Peters should be fired. Like, and that's just, it's not realistic, not just because of what his record is, but like you don't hire a guy to run your franchise and then I guess this would probably be 20 months later or 22 months later or something like that. Say, we went in the wrong direction when the first direction he pointed you was to the NFC Championship game. So I think that one's like crazy. Like that's just crazy talk. It's not something that Josh Harris would consider. I do understand the people who would put some of the blame for how this season is working out at his feet because it's clear they haven't developed the depth. And I think there's part of, I don't know this, I wonder about it, like going to the NFC Championship game in year one had to speed up the clock a little bit. And, Bobby Wagner played a great game on Sunday, but I know people have questioned, like, was it the right thing to bring him back on another one-year deal at his age? Like the Zach Ertz type of thing, is that putting the cart before the horse and not really developing the depth that you're going to need to sustain this thing long term? This might sound crazy, Kevin, but I think back to the last exhibition game, the last preseason game of 3 that this team played, and it was largely like a wasted exhibition season because Daniels played one series the whole time. You didn't see a lot of these veterans. Like you could question whether they were ready for the year, but they played the Ravens in the last preseason game and they got destroyed, and rightfully so. Everybody was like, well, it doesn't matter because they didn't play people who matter. But what it shows is that in the evolution of roster building, Baltimore was just leap years ahead of Washington in terms of building depth and having talent from 1 to 53 and 1 to 70 or whatever. And I think that matters. I think it's like that's a step that this franchise hasn't taken yet. So while my craziest take is like get rid of Adam Peters, I do think that I wonder about what the processes are going forward to get quickly back to success next year, but also have a slow build underneath there where those draft picks that you take in the later rounds are really becoming, foundational pieces, not because they're stars, but because they can come in and contribute and are, the 52nd and 53rd man on the roster do matter and can contribute.
Yeah, no, I get it. And when you said they sped up the clock, they didn't even wait, until they had gone to the NFC Championship. They sped up the clock by trading for Marshawn Lattimore at 7-2, at the trade deadline. And I do think that there is, and there was a recalibration of the recalibration because you're in this window, which isn't just this year, it's also next year of Jaden's rookie deal. And I think another interesting conversation, and I had this conversation last night with Ben and with Grant on Ben's podcast, Grant Paulson. The idea that, if next year they have, a normal amount of injuries and the defense still isn't that good, if I were to say to you 10-7 or 7-10, which would be more likely?
Oh, man. I mean, so here's part of my calculus in that is like, they have open cap space this year.
Yeah,
and
a lot of
I
it.
would wonder, I wonder like, why is that? Because if part of your calculus is we do have Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract, well, it doesn't matter that he's cheap if you're not spending it all elsewhere. And that doesn't mean I think, you should max out every year, or they did something that was egregious this year. But I would, if they have $25 million or whatever of unused cap space next year, I think it's legit to ask the question, well, why is that? You're not taking advantage of the financial flexibility afforded by your rookie quarterback deal and maxing out the roster. So I've avoided your question about 7-10 or 10-7. I do think that the defense has to improve. And of the takes that I don't think are crazy, like I do think it's crazy to say like, oh, Dan Quinn, he's a defensive coach, like, and he hasn't delivered defensively, you got to get rid of him. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Quinn, very loyal person, is like, hey, look, Joe Witt Jr., like I gave you a shot and it didn't work. And I took over the play calling duties. And as the head coach, I don't want to have to do that. So I'm going to let you go because the results haven't been there. The defense, in order to get to 10-7 next year, can't be, whatever the injuries are, it can't be, have the production that it's had the first 2 years of this regime.
Yeah, I mean, even though they won 12 with a pretty bad defense last year, I think that it's interesting. They've got to improve defensively. One of the things just overall, and I've referenced it a few times. I'm wondering if you're paying attention to it, is just how defense has really been what this
did to Mahomes. Bo Nix is not the quarterback that Jaden Daniels is, but you can see in that team that's a real threat because he's not terrible and the defense can stop anybody. I thought Seattle, when they came here, it was really, really easy to get distracted by Sam Darnold and their offense because, I think he went 17 for 17 in the first half. And
against our defense, right.
It was just crazy that you're like, oh my God, they're up 31-0 or whatever it was. But that's a defense that, Dan Quinn would have been proud of when he was the coordinator there and Bobby Wagner was his middle linebacker. Like you're on to something there because, we've talked about for years that the league sets things up to favor the offense. The other thing that happens is this league goes in cycles and people figure things out, and it's a chess game, not only week to week, but year over year. It'll be really interesting to see in these playoffs to come, like who are the final four teams and what is their makeup, because you're not wrong at all. Like some defenses have come to play and they really define their teams in a way that we haven't seen for a bit.
Yeah, and I think another part of it as we think about this team here is that most people focus when they focus on you've got to build around, an elite level talent like Jaden Daniels. They focus on the offensive players, the O-line, the skill position players, when in fact, when you think about it, Drake May has the number one rush defense in the NFL. Bo Nix may have the best defense in the NFL. Even quarterbacks that have sort of resurrected their careers. Sam Darnold the last 2 years. Unbelievable defense last year in Minnesota. Unbelievable defense, as you pointed out, this year in Seattle. Baker Mayfield's career was resurrected with not only a great defense, a great defensive head coach. And in Jaden's first, 20 games last year, 5.5 games this year, just terrible defense. So something they've got to focus on for sure. And that brings me back to something you already started on, and that is Joe Witt Jr. I mean, he's done. There's no chance he's back next year as the DC. Have you thought about the direction Dan Quinn goes in?
I haven't very much, because I think that knowing Quinn, you want to really dig into his past and figure out who he's worked for or worked with.
Right.
And you might find somebody in that tree, and it's it's a huge tree because he's worked in the league for so long now. I will say, well, that would be the first place I would look, some sort of association with Dan Quinn. He hired Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator, who he didn't have a tie with. So
true.
We might look for clues, but it's not like, undeniable evidence. But I think, what does Quinn talk about all the time? Identity, right? And he knows his identity, his team's identity can't be like, well, we give up 410 yards a game and we just win 31-28 shootouts all the time because we have this like awesome quarterback who really has provided this franchise with something that it hasn't had for generations and generations and generations. It has to be more than that. He's not here to just be happy winning 31-28, which obviously they can't do now given all the injuries. They've got to be better on that side of the ball, particularly in the environment that you described, where defenses are having a real impact. I mean, the Eagles got a very, very significant win against a very, very good opponent when their offense was, borderline terrible because they could force a team with a lot of weapons into just being stalled for most of the day.
Do you have a position? Have you taken a position on Jaden when he's cleared, whether or not he should play?
So I haven't written it, but I'm a strong believer that he should play. I mean, I just think you're talking about, one thing about him and Terry and the chemistry they developed in 2024. And, we were trying to kind of say like, well, training camp is not that big of a deal. Like they have a year of reps underneath. It's not like Jaden's rookie season was the year that Terry held out. Well, sure. But they're also not like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. Like they don't have,
right.
Hundreds of games together. They have 20 games together. And so I think I'm very much in the camp of more reps are important, particularly if it's with, 3 or 4 games left in the season. Like if it's the last game, I
sure.
And he's not ready until then fine, punt it till next year. But I I think we all need to see more from Jaden Daniels, including Jaden Daniels. Like, one, he wants to play. He will want to play. And two, I think the season is not lost if you get more experience for the guy who is most important for the future. If he plays 4 games at the end of the year and you're like, oh, thank God, he got back into a rhythm. He showed how dangerous he is. Terry McLaurin was healthy as well. They connected again. He's a weapon with he can use his legs to be a weapon. He's gotten better as a pocket passer. His decision making is better. Like, you'd feel a lot better going into the offseason versus having 0 more snaps, no more evidence of, like, is he as explosive and as dangerous as he was as a rookie? Like, I just am very, very strongly on the side of, like, if he's ready and he's healthy, let's see more.
Yeah, 100%. I'd also throw into that, okay, Cliff actually is what we may have thought he was last year. And, I said this to Tommy yesterday on my podcast, like, I don't think you can get away with, if you're the head coach and you've got a locker room full of players that, that you're trying to keep together and you're trying to keep motivated and you're trying to win games, if you've got a healthy Jaden Daniels not playing. I just don't think that would sit well. To your point, when he's cleared is really the key. And if it's with 2 games left or a game left, that's a different conversation than if he is cleared, for the last 5 in December into January. I wanted to finish with this subject, but I just, I know you follow it like I do. What was your thought on Jim Smith, the new athletic director, bringing Locksley back for next year?
So interesting. I mean, I got that news on Sunday while I was in Madrid as the game was going into the 4th quarter, and talked to Smith about it during the game. And, there's a cynical way to look at it that, look, Maryland doesn't have the $13+ million that it would take to buy Mike Locksley out and pay another coach and increase its NIL dollars so that it can actually fund a functional roster. I get that. I do take Smith at his word that he feels like foundationally things are fairly good with the program, and he's going to dig in with Locksley in the offseason and figure out a way that they can retain some of the talent that is mostly young talent that they have on this roster, and B, keep a very strong and star-studded recruiting class together with Locksley going forward. So I get both frustration and eye rolling from hardcore Terps fans of, like, wondering, is Mike Locksley really the one to get it done? I also get Smith's take that in year 1 of his tenure, it really wasn't the time to make a change. And then I would say this too, Kevin, because I believe it. There are 12 or 13 or 14 Power 4 openings right now.
Maryland's
there will
last.
Probably be, there'll probably be, 20 by the end of the year. Are 20 schools going to make improvements in their head coach because they gassed the last one? I would say absolutely not. And then once, and I'm not saying Jim Smith considered this, but James Franklin was the very, very interesting name because there's only one other person in the country who has accepted the Maryland job. When Franklin was the coach in waiting, when he was still on Ralph's staff, you knew he knows what the program is and could be. And once he's off the board, I don't see an obvious, then you're just looking, you're throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping you find the next Kurt Cignetti. And I think the argument would be you're unlikely to do that. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I don't have a problem with him bringing Locksley back for 2026. I also think Locksley is on notice for 2026 because he's not getting an extension beyond that if we're looking at another 4-8, 5-7 type of situation.
Hope you're well. Glad you're back. Thanks for doing this. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Kevin. Anytime.
Barry's Verluga, everybody. Ryan Fowler will jump on with us next. We'll talk some NFL and we'll talk Washington with Ryan after these words from a few of our sponsors. Ryan Fowler has a podcast called Commanding the Huddle, covers the NFL, used to cover our team as well, @_Ryan Fowler_ on X on Twitter. We've had Ryan on the show before. You know, I'm looking and scrolling through your X account right now, and at the very top of the list is right now, or close to the top of the list, is the NFL odds-on favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Cleveland Browns, Carson Schweschinger, the linebacker from UCLA. He's been unbelievable this year. And then they've also got, obviously, the runaway Defensive Player of the Year in Myles Garrett. Like, I've talked about Ryan, Cleveland's defense this year. Like, what would it have taken offensively for them to be like a 500 team and in contention? Because their defense is sick.
It is. Kevin, first off, man, always appreciate having me on, man. Always good to talk ball with you.
Yeah, good to have you back.
Yeah, it is really fun to watch this defense fly around, specifically Carson and really this entire rookie class, really for what Cleveland's been. But bottom line, if they could just get anybody in there to just be, I mean, the 28th, 29th best quarterback in football to come in and just maneuver the ball around, and they haven't been able to do that. And you mentioned the rookie class. Kevin, Quinshon Judkins has done a really nice job, you know, as a rookie as well. So I'm kind of right there with you. This defense has been really, really fun to watch fly around, and it really is headlined, of course, by Myles. But what Carson has done in the middle of that defense as still a young guy, now, of course, a rookie, a kid that was a walk-on to that UCLA program is pretty special.
There's an ulterior motive for bringing up Cleveland first, and I'll get to that in a moment. But where's Myles Garrett going to rank all time in terms of defensive players when he's done?
I think if he wasn't in Cleveland, right, the situation that has consistently surrounded them, I absolutely think, Kevin, that there's an argument that he is the best defensive player in the history of the NFL. I do think he's up there with the Lawrence Taylors of the world, you know, the Reggie Whites of the world, the Deion Sanders of the world. I absolutely think that he is unbelievable and lived up to and exceeded every expectation what he was coming out of A&M as a freak of nature. And you know this as much as I do, Kevin, specifically around draft time, where the word generational is thrown around to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that you know. But this guy coming out of A&M and what he's been since he entered the league a long time ago has been absolutely unbelievable. And I think for me personally, he's going to go down as one of the top 2 or 3 defenders to ever play in the NFL.
Yeah, I think I said maybe a couple of weeks back, like over the last 12 or so years, 2 guys, Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, are going to be on that all-time list when all is said and done, with the Reggie Whites and with the Lawrence Taylors, et cetera. And to your point, I'm not sure, fans of one team that don't pay attention as much to the rest of the league understand how great Myles Garrett is. So the ulterior motive was this. I'm assuming Kevin Stefanski and the whole gang is going to be gone from Cleveland, which would leave Jim Schwartz out there as a potential DC hire. Do you think that's true, A? And then B, should Washington be interested?
I'll say this. First off, when you look at that Cleveland defense, I think you could have a lot of defensive-minded coaches come into that defense and do a good job.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Kevin, just off of, not trying to break any news here, but just having a few conversations with some folks, obviously with Joe Witt out in Washington, there's just no shot he comes back in town. 2 names I think that are interested to watch. One is Jeff Howard. He's the current DB coach out there in Seattle with Mike McDonald. And then the other is Al Harris. Of course, the connections with him back with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt in Dallas, who's now the DB coach for Chicago. So I think 2 of those guys are names to watch. I think for Jim Schwartz, is that a name that you maybe want to recycle here into Washington potentially? But I think just overall, Kevin, you got to get guys in the building that fit what you want to do on the defensive side of the ball and get back really to a defense to where we saw a little bit against Miami, right? Bend but don't break. But just the talent absolutely has to improve mightily at all 3 levels before we can ever talk about really this defense becoming a group that's even top 15 here moving into 2026.
What about Jonathan Gannon if he gets boomed in Arizona?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting name. I think that's obviously a situation where you look at him and say, hey, look, are you willing to be a guy that goes from being a DC to a head coach to a DC? But I think the conversation really centers around sometimes it's okay for guys to just be coordinators. And I even think about Mike McDaniel, really, in that aspect as well, or even the Cliff Kingsburys of the world. I think Gannon's a heck of a name. I think he's a guy for some people that think he's a little bit corny, a little bit. I think the best word to describe him as out there in Arizona, with the player's perspective. But I think he's absolutely a name that should be thrown around for a young, physical, fiery head coach that really got the best out of specifically that front seven there in Philly when he was there.
We're talking to Ryan Fowler. You also tweeted out, after the Detroit game, you kind of broke down the Gibbs 43-yard touchdown pass. I've got a guy that comes on with me every week that just former player breaks down film, and he said that looked like a walkthrough play. The whole game looked like a scout team game. I said it last week, and it sounds like you felt the same way. I don't think I've seen a worse defensive performance this year or in recent years than Washington's against Detroit.
Completely agree. And at all three levels. And I think, we can talk about the injuries all day long. And, it's unfortunate, really, and just how this has decimated the team, bottom line. But I think overall, I'm just been trying to see someone show up on the football field and have a competitive fire, the willingness to put on a helmet and have some pride in yourself and show up and hit and at least try. And from a coaching perspective, willingness to put Jordan McGee on the field more, put Kane Matrano on the field, have the guy active, allow him to make some plays. This is an evaluation period. And in that Detroit game where you just consistently couldn't do anything, you couldn't get off a block, you couldn't cover anybody, you're getting turned around on things, and then you got Bobby Wagner and man against Jahmyr Gibbs. It was an absolute joke, and I'm right there with you as far as it's absolutely one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen from a Burgundy Gold roster in a long, long, long time.
So what does that say about Philadelphia's defense right now, Ryan, where the Lions literally struggled to gain yards?
It's pretty special. And I think it's even special to where, for me, one name that people don't talk about enough, he's only played in 3 games this year, is watching Nakobe Dean carry Jahmyr Gibbs hip to hip, right, on a wheel route down the field, 40 yards. That's a guy that barely plays any rotational snaps. And he's a guy they can trust on in certain moments. And at every level of that defense, they understand their role, whether it's Cooper DeJean and as one of the more physical nickel corners in football, or the development of a 7th-round pick in Moro Ojomo, who is leading that team, Kevin, in pressure so far. And we're working into the back end of the year. Or the development of Jalix Hunt, a former safety that started out his career at Cornell, then went to Houston Christian. It's pretty unbelievable as far as what that defense is beyond the blue chip talent that they have. Because Kevin, look at the blue chip talent in Philadelphia, where you can look at legitimately 7 to 8 guys on that roster, and then we're Washington's perspective where Jaden, Tunsil, and Terry, and there's one of those guys that's been consistently on the field this year. That's where we talk about talent, right? And it's just such a major separation right now.
I thought you were going to mention Jalen Phillips and the impact he's had since that trade. I mean, he was always kind of a playmaker that nobody knew about in Miami, but he's been awesome in these few games.
And as well, Kevin, look back to him before he transferred to Miami at UCLA. This was a guy that almost hung up his career, right? Because the concussion concerns. People forget about that, So absolutely, they just consistently find talent. Howie Roseman, you got to tip your cap when it's due. He's always looking to add talent, improve a roster. And snaps up there are always earned. They're never given, no matter where you get drafted, where you played. If you can show up and compete and play on that offense or defense, you're going to be on that roster. And you just got to tip your cap to Howie Roseman and always adding talent. And Jalen Phillips, as much as I hate to say it, obviously being a Washington guy for sure, as you are, Kevin, but he's been a hell of an addition for that Eagles defense.
The Jalen Phillipses, the Benitos, the guy that was in Minnesota that's in Houston now, the edge rusher, lean. Why am I blank?
Danielle Hunter?
Yeah, Danielle Hunter. Like, that's really the body type over the last 5, 6, 7 years that tends to be super disruptive off the edge, more so than the power guys. Those guys are all tall and lean. I mean, that is what you're kind of looking for now, I think, more so than, you want him to be an edge setter, don't get me wrong, as a run stopper. But in terms of disruptive in the pass game, it's the longer, leaner guys that have become the trend over the last 5 years. True or not?
True. Absolutely true. And now I think there are some teams out there that value that power-laden aspect to young rushers. I think specifically the Los Angeles Rams with Jared Verse and Byron Young. But I think even looking at, and I know we'll get into this in the months to come as far as looking at guys in this draft for 2026, but even looking at, you mentioned Nick Bonito, he really fits into that spinner role and what he is in Denver. And you can even look at the same body type where Frankie Louvu, what he was last year. That's kind of what that role is, or at least the body type, the archetype that you want at edge, and where you have the length and the explosiveness to win to either shoulder as a tackle and win in isolation. That's really the body type that immediately comes in and forces consistently quarterbacks off their spot. And for Washington's perspective, I mean, I tip my cap to Jacob Martin and what he's been able to do this year.
Yeah.
But overall, they ignored it in the draft in 2025, and now they're here in 2026 where they only have 6 picks. You're going to have to add some players, whether it's in the draft or whether it's in free agency, to find some players, bottom line, that can win in isolation, because it's just not enough right now outside, for me, of course, with Dorrance Armstrong.
Yeah, I mean, I just had Barry Verluga from the Washington Post on, and I'll ask you the same question I asked him, which is, after obviously Jaden and Terry, who have missed much of, if not most of the season, of this unbelievable injury, ravaged season, what's the next, most important loss?
You said outside of injury, Kevin?
No, I'm just saying after Jaden and Terry, who's been their biggest loss to injury this year?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks will not talk about Dietrich Wise. I think that's what they asked him to be as far as setting the edge and a veteran. But Dorrance Armstrong was playing outstanding football at edge. He was one of the top edge rushers in this entire league before he went out, which was a shame. That's what they asked him to be as their prize free agent addition, 2 years ago. So I think for me, looking at what they asked him to be on early downs as a bigger physical body type that really fit that profile as far as years past with the Chase Youngs, Montez Sweat, 255, 260 type of players. Dorrance Armstrong, for me, what he was on early downs and on passing downs was really the biggest, injury for me so far.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think just the losing their top 3 defensive ends, after Jaden and Terry would be at the top of the list, because they went from being, last year a terrible run stopping team to maybe being improved, with some edge setting guys. And you're so right to focus on Wise. That's why they brought him in. And they didn't just lose the 2 of them. They lost their 3rd stringer in John Baptiste. And it's been horrible. I don't know why, you pointed out that Gibbs play. I don't know why between, Achane and Gibbs in the last 2 games, they didn't just get 20 carries and go for like 270. Like they basically took Achane out of the game, didn't give him the ball in the 2nd and 3rd quarter. He was getting 7+ a carry, or 6+ a carry. It just seems so easy. We're talking to Ryan Fowler. Ryan's been on with us before. He knows our team well. He knows the league really well. So right now, if they end up with, let's just say, the 8th pick in the first round, somewhere around there, because you look at the draft and you spend some time, do you have somebody in mind that you wouldn't pass on versus exploring a trade back to accumulate more picks?
Yeah, you hit it on the head there, Kevin, as far as trading back and trying to accumulate talent. I will say this. I don't think there is a player in this class, or really in a lot of classes, that you can look at and say, look, this is one guy that we have to have, and it's going to fix everything that Washington, the lapses in talent that they have. There's not a guy in this class that can do that. Now, if, to answer your question, if they were to stay in the top 10 and there's a player that is on the board and he's available, I think it's Arvell Reese from Ohio State. Yeah. His ability to play backer and to come down an edge. And this is a way different type of beast than what, we're talking about Frankie Louvu as far as hybrid players. Now, I will say this. There's a whole lot of conversations right now with scouts, and the conversations I've had, where a lot of the conversation with him is he the best defensive player in college football? For me, that's been David Bailey at Texas Tech, the Stanford transfer. And we
more so than Bain.
More so than Bain for me, yes. And I'll say this, Kevin. When I get to April, there's a long way to go. The All-Star stuff, meetings, a lot of conversations to be had. When I watch Ruben Bain, and I appreciate him on early downs, I appreciate the power. The double teams are obviously something that's not going to have immediately at the NFL level. When I watch David Bailey, his ability to do it at Stanford, his ability to do it at Texas Tech, the spotlight he is going to get as the Red Raiders make the CFP run, I think he is fantastic. I think he is a sensational football player. If he's there in the top 10 at 7 or 8 after Bain goes off the board, that's a player that I'm willing to take a risk on potentially adding there at 8, even if potentially Orville Reese is also on the board. I love both of those players in Reese and in Bailey.
Is Jeremiah Love in the same category, meaning, top 10-ish kind of a first-round running back as Bijan or Saquon or Gibbs were?
For me, he is. And I'm glad, Kevin, that you didn't say Ashton Genty. I'm glad you did it, because I think if you put Jeremiah Love and you give him the amount of carries that Genty had at Boise State and put him against Mountain West competition, it's completely different than what Genty even did out there in the Mountain West. I think these are two different ball players. I think Jeremiah Love, for me, is going to end up a top 4 or 5 player in this class.
Wow.
For me, I think he's fantastic. I think he's a guy that now it correlates as far as what you have up front and who's creating gaps for you. But what he can do with the ball in his hands as a guy that can go through you, over you, and around you, that is a unique ability at his size, because he looks different than a Jahmyr Gibbs, right? He looks like Saquon Barkley. He looks like Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. Bigger.
He's a physically impressive guy.
Yep.
He is as gifted as you're going to find a running back, really, in my opinion, the last few years of the draft. He is a top 5 talent for me right now, and he's probably going to continue to rise as Notre Dame continues to play big-time football games. I think he's outstanding.
What do you think of the quarterbacks? I know that we've done the unbelievable, started with Klubnik, it started with, Nussmeier, and it's gone through this unbelievable, merry-go-round, and we've landed on Mendoza and maybe Moore and maybe Ty Simpson. How do you see him?
I think it's better than the consensus right now. When I go through this thing, right, I always, of course, trust my evaluation, my conversations, and everybody's hearing different things, and everybody's watching kind of the same tape, though. When I look at this class, my thing with Fernando Mendoza is kind of the conversation that was surrounding Bo Nix coming out of Oregon, where Fernando takes care of the football. He wants to win in the intermediate areas, and he does push the ball down the field a little bit more. But are you taking that chance if you're New Orleans, if you're the Jets, potentially at the top of this draft, to get the guy in the building that really wants to win in that shallow and intermediate areas and balance that pushing it vertically down the field, because they do have talent in those respective buildings? And I think overall, this quarterback class, Dante Moore, as of now, doesn't look like he will declare. Also a guy that has limited starts, of course, in college. I think he will be back in school. But I really do like this. I mean, the second-round quarterback is really a non-existent thing, Kevin, in the NFL. But when you work into the latter half of the third round and into the fourth round, I think there's some players in Jaden Mayava, Brendan Sorsby. What do teams think about Carson Beck and Drew Aller? What's the landscape going to be surrounding a guy like Trinidad Chambliss to come in as a dual threat player? And I think
he's so tiny.
He is, but I think the dual threat capabilities of him, teams like so far. And I will say one player to keep an eye on here as we move through this process that is not talked about at all, as far as a name that could rise to potentially the late day one conversation, Kevin, is Darian Mensah from Duke, who has been outstanding for the Blue Devils this year in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, in talking about the quarterbacks this early, thinking that, it's possible Washington could end up in the top 10, very possible. Is there that opportunity to get a haul for somebody that's sitting there at 7 and they've got 7 overall? And I've been saying, I don't think so. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And really, Kevin, just looking at this thing, Jaden masked so many inefficiencies last year, and it'd be silly, right, to not talk about the injuries and how it's affected things. But the bottom line is that this roster needs talent. It needs talent on offense and on defense. Do you go wide receiver 1 and then try to add an edge in a corner? You can look at every single position on this defense and say that they need more talent there. 6 picks isn't going to do it. You're asking all those rookies next year to be impact players. That's just not realistic right now. There's questions about Peters' class in 24, the class in 25 with guys like Newton and Ben Simmons and Mike Sanders still. What is he going to be? They just got to add talent and whatever picks that they have and whatever talent. Because you gotta trust your scouting staffs, the pro side and the college side. I think Adam Peters is going to do that. And I do think he's going to hit on some players this year. I do.
I mean, my position is always it's just way too early on, especially this draft, let alone the 2024 draft. But beyond that, was there a player that you would have preferred at 29 other than Connor Lee Jr.? Because we were all thinking pass rusher. Pierce was gone. Ezaraku was still there. We've seen that, as a rookie, he's probably a bit of a one-trick pony at best right now. People say, well, they didn't get their pass rusher. Was that pass rusher available at 29?
Yeah, Ezaraku was my top edge rusher at that point in time. Kevin, yep. I did have a late one on Donovan. I thought he was excellent at Boston College. Nick Amanwari was a name that was thrown around from. Yep. He's a player. I thought more so he was an athlete more so than a football player, but he's figured it out, of course, in Seattle with the talent around him. But I think overall for me, if they wanted to stay at tackle, Josh Simmons was the focus for me. It wasn't Josh Connerly.
That would have been. Right? I mean, is he back yet? I've stopped following the story since Washington played Kansas City. He'd gone pretty much AWOL, had issues. I hope he's okay. But is he back?
He played against last week in Kansas City's game against.
He did. What was the issue?
Really well. Yeah. I will say this, Kevin. It was an off the field thing that I'm not going to try to I don't have a ton of sources there as far as actually what happened there, Kevin. So I'm not going to speculate at all. Yeah.
Yeah. An odd situation for sure. Do you have an opinion on if Jaden's cleared, should he play or not play?
I think he should play. I think you got to get Noah Brown hopefully back on the field, get Terry back on the field, see what you got, let the guys play. Really comes back to my point, Kevin, as far as, moving into next year, you want to see guys and trust your scouting staff, really, college and pro. You can hit on anybody in any round, any draft. See what you have with Jaden under center and moving into 26. Try to develop some rapport. You're going out there with Robbie Chosen and Chris Moore. It's all respect to those guys. They're NFL ball players.
But you don't have to say it. We know. Stuff, injuries have been the biggest issue this year, clearly.
There's levels to this stuff, and you understand that, Kevin. And I just think going out there and getting them killed, you're going to, it's a locker room thing. What's the morale going to be in the locker room if you're just holding your best player out and not playing?
Yeah, right? I think it's a great point.
Let them play ball and compete. Let them compete.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about the draft, but they've got, all this money, 90 million or so in cap space for next year, because a lot of these guys, they've got, 18, 19 guys on 1-year deals. Like, they should be busy, don't you think, in February and March? And if so, are there a couple of guys you've already been thinking about?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a more interesting approach as to what Adam Peters had last year, where there's a lot of, hey, let's refill this front four, get bigger bodies to set the edge and defend the run. I think at times it showed up a little bit in the early portions of the season at times. As far as names, I think one name, overall when you look at this thing, a little bit more expensive, is it David Onyemata? I think his name is a veteran from Atlanta. If you want another bigger body to come along this front four.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers is an interesting name as far as a wide receiver 2 or 3 to come in from Jacksonville. There's so many guys out there that you could make a case for, cheap or not. I do think there are a couple guys in Washington that I'd like to see back. I think I would love to see Jacob Martin back. Chris Paul, I would love to see back as well. And I will say this, Kevin, not a guy that's going to be, I don't think he's going to be gone in the future. Chris Rodriguez. I've absolutely loved what I've seen from that young man as a prior regime selection on day 3. Why he was taken out of the football game to give Bill Krosky-Merritt more carries, I don't understand it. He's the guy week after week that is showing up and acting like his carry is the last. He's running through people's chest plate, and he's taking advantage of every single touch. And if this is a situation where I'm Adam Peters and I'm trying to find ball players who are not just wearing a jersey and stealing paychecks from me right now like a Preston Smith is, Chris Rodriguez deserves more touches. And you got to give players that want to show up, that are young, youth-infused, physical, cheap ball players, let them play ball and see what you have, and let the other guys that want to come in and steal paychecks, let him walk. You got to find ball players for Washington, and there's not enough right now.
Right. I agree with that, by the way. I think it's so funny because, like, as fans, we all watch every single play of every single game, including stupid preseason games. And I don't think there's ever been a moment where we all haven't said collectively, man, that Rodriguez, he's pretty good. Like, why not more opportunities? I think in the past he was not in the greatest of shape. We kind of learned that, during this past off season. What would you do with Debo?
I think Debo should stay. I do. I think Debo's done a fine job. And I think his ability to be an alignment versatile player when Terry is on the football field, or if you get Luke and Jalen back on the outside, players that they spent decent capital on to be unique pieces. And we've seen flashes from both of them this year specifically. I would keep Debo as your wide receiver 2 flex piece. And I think this offense will get back to being a playoff type of contender in the years to come.
Real quickly, back to Chris Paul, and I totally agree with you on that, but do you think he's developed a healthy market for himself?
I think he has. Yeah. I absolutely think he has. And a credit to him, right? Development is always something that goes overlooked, Kevin, in this process, specifically for young players in this microwave society. And it kind of falls into that Brandon Coleman bucket too, because I still think he's a contributor player in Washington. But for Chris Paul, he may, right, entertain the market and see what he has elsewhere, but good for him as far as taking advantage of an opportunity and being really fortifying the left side of this offensive line for Washington this year, which has been simply outstanding with Tunsil next to him.
All right, last one for Ryan Fowler. We sit here and, entering week 12 already. Amazing. And it's a crazy, kind of standings, right? Denver, New England, and Indianapolis are the top 3 in the AFC. We've got Chicago leading the NFC North. We've got the Panthers within a half game in the NFC South. Give me right now your Super Bowl matchup.
Oh, goodness. I love it. Man, the defense in Denver is just outstanding. I just don't think Bo Nix gets them there. I will go, I'll go Bills and Rams right now as my matchup. I'll go Bills, Rams.
Yeah, and Buffalo might have to do it on the road. But that's not a bad one. Thanks, Ryan, for doing this. Hope you're well. Appreciate it as always.
Absolutely. Thanks as always, Kevin. Talk soon.
Ryan Fowler, everybody. Want to mention to you right now that Window Nation's end of year sale is going on. That means you've got a chance, if you were to purchase windows from Window Nation, to pay 50% on not just all windows, but any window style. So no matter what you like, you're going to pay half price. And then if you choose to finance your purchase, you're not going to be charged interest until the year 2030. 5 years of 0% financing. Your total price includes Window Nation's professional one-day installation. Window Nation's proven quality windows are so good, you'll actually save money with lower utility bills every month during the winter, and we've got cold weather coming up. Late Thanksgiving weekend was looking at the extended, and then into December. It looks like an early winter for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. If you've got older windows, you can save big getting them in there before winter begins. Those windows are backed with a lifetime warranty, so you've got nothing to risk. Windows from Window Nation. You're getting the best product. You're getting a great deal. You're getting a company that's got over 45,000 five-star customer reviews. And Forbes listed them as the #1 window installation company in America. Don't wait. Window Nation's end-of-year sale is your chance to save big with 50% off all window styles plus 0% financing for 5 years. Sale ends soon. Visit windownation.com today to get started. That's windownation.com. Some Hall of Fame news. Joe Jacoby is on the list of 9 senior candidates now still in the running for the 2026 senior category Hall of Famer. A blue ribbon committee reduced the list down to 9 from 34 candidates. From here, the committee will cut down the list to 3 finalists who will advance to voting by the full selection committee to be conducted before the Super Bowl in February. So this is the list, for those of you not following it, that Jake is now on. The other players on this list include, here's the list: Ken Anderson, quarterback, Cincinnati. Many people thought that Anderson, like Jake, should have perhaps been in the Hall of Fame during the modern era opportunity. Ken Anderson, a 4-time Pro Bowler, started for the Bengals from 71 to 86. He was the league MVP in 81. Ken Anderson was a really good NFL quarterback. I've always felt like he was certainly and should have been in the conversation for a Hall of Famer. Roger Craig's on that list. Henry Ellard, who played here at the end of his career, is on the list. L.C. Greenwood is on the list. Stanley Morgan, Steve Tasker, Otis Taylor, Eddie Medore, who played in the 50s and 60s, and then Jake. Jake, 13-year career with the Skins, 3-time Super Bowl winner, 2-time All-Pro, named to the Pro Bowl 4 consecutive years from 83 to 86, and of course a part of perhaps the most famous offensive line, certainly one of them of all time, the Hogs. I look at this list, if you're wondering what I think about this, I think that Ken Anderson and Roger Craig are going to be seriously considered. Steve Tasker, maybe even to a certain degree, is one of the best special teams players, 7 Pro Bowls, 6 straight, in Buffalo. But Jake's got a shot. He's got a shot to make it to that final 3. And then there's no limit. The overall class has to be between, I think, 4 and 8. But it's not like they limit it to just 1 senior per year. So fingers crossed, this is the year for Joe Jacoby. I mentioned something earlier that there was, some reporting, quasi-reporting, but it was really part of this column that Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano from ESPN do every Wednesday, where they give you a lot of what they're hearing around the NFL. And the first question that they answer is, what are you hearing on the potential returns for both Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels? So I will read what they said about Jayden Daniels. Graziano says, as for Daniels, the Commanders have a bye week this week and will examine everything. They've lost 6 games in a row to drop to 3-8 in what looked like a promising season to start. There has been external debate about whether it makes sense to bring back Daniels at all this season. But he writes, from what I've been told, the plan in Washington is still that Daniels will return to the starting lineup once doctors clear him from his elbow injury. Jeremy Fowler wrote, Washington's situation with Daniels is more complicated. Sources have maintained that while Daniels could return as quickly as 3 weeks from the occurrence of the injury, that would mean Denver a week from Sunday night. And I think when we talked about this, early on in the couple of days after, I said there is a belief that it's not serious and that it could be, a 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 week injury. 3 weeks would be Denver, after this bye week, which it would be the 3rd week. But Fowler writes, the team has loosely braced for a 5 to 6 week absence just in case. That tells me that shutting him down remains a possibility based on his durability this season and the team's current standing. Big picture talks about how to proceed will play out over the coming days and provide clarity one way or the other. And then Graziano finished it up by saying, I'm pretty sure the way the season has unfolded has thrown the Commanders for a loop. They did not see 3-8 coming, so this bye week offers a chance to reset and make some longer lens decisions without having to prepare for a game. Daniels will lobby to get back out onto the field as soon as he can, and the fact that the injury he's dealing with right now isn't to his legs or his throwing arms certainly offers grounds for encouragement. Yeah, I mean, if he's cleared and there are at least 4 games left, he plays from my standpoint. I think you'd have a challenge to look at all the other players in your locker room and say, our best player's been cleared, but we've decided we're not going to play him anymore. He needs the reps. And, I would even suggest that if it's, 4 or 5 games or 6 games, 5 games left in the season, and Terry and Noah Brown aren't back, and it's still, Robbie Chosen and Jacoby Jones and Ja'Cory Brooks and Tay Martin and whoever they put out there, I think you still got to put Jaden out there. And you just have to be a little bit more protective. You can't keep him in a game at the end, dropping him back and having him run RPOs in a 38-14 game with, 8 minutes to go, 7 minutes to go, or whatever it was in the Seattle game. You should not, I don't think, when you bring him back, run quarterback powers or quarterback counters. And maybe you even reduce the number of zone reads. Although the zone read play tends to be a play in which you can protect yourself. Dropping back's not safe either. Scrambling sometimes keeps you safer than hanging in the pocket and taking a big hit. But I'm not expecting anything other than when he's cleared, he plays. Unless he's cleared much longer after what the expectation for him being cleared is. I hope when he is cleared, I do hope that Terry's back. Noah Brown is back. They're healthy at tight end. Their running back situation remains at least where it is right now. The O-line continues to gel and stay healthy. I hope all of that is available. And wouldn't it be nice if what we saw on Sunday in Madrid was more about Quinn than the opponent? I think it was more about the opponent, but I think Quinn had something to do with it for sure. So, because that's part of the support structure too. Having a defense that isn't providing scout team looks for the opponent. All right, when we come back, we'll finish it up with an NFL buy and sell. What are you buying? What are you selling? We each have a few. If you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. A team, a player that you want to buy or you want to sell, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Here is what's happening. Shedeur Sanders will be making his first start for the Cleveland Browns. This comes after starter Dylan Gabriel suffered a concussion last week versus the Ravens. Plus, Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase has been suspended for 1 game after it was revealed that he spit on Steelers cornerback Jalen Ramsey on Sunday. Plus, the college football rankings were dropped last night. Not many changes to speak of, but Alabama falls all the way down to number 10 in the rankings, and Georgia jumps into the 4th spot, earning the bye week out of the SEC. Tonight, the Caps, they get underway. They'll take on the Edmonton Oilers at home for 80s night. Logan Thompson will man the crease for Washington. Pregame gets going at 6:45. John Walton, Ken Stabbert, and Katie Florio on the call on 106.7 The Fan. Puck drop set for 7 p.m. Plus, right here on the Team 980, the Terps get going against Mount St. Mary's. Pregame action at 6:30 when Johnny Holiday and Chris Nocky take over the airwaves. Tip-off set for 7 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, and our buy and sell segment today is sponsored by IHOP, introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big, filling, sit-down breakfast for only $6? Go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. So here's my first buy, and I have a couple today, Max. I'm buying Shadur Sanders in his first start to have a decent game.
Yes.
He looked terrible last week.
It didn't look great.
Coming in relief. But it's not fair because, backup quarterbacks don't get any of the reps, first-team reps. He's going to have a full week of first-team reps, and he's playing the Raiders. He's playing Max I think he's going to have over 50 yards rushing, and he'll throw for $180.
I like this.
It'll be a performance that people say, okay, there's something to him. I'm not a big fan of Shadur. Going back to Colorado, I thought he just held the ball way too long and just didn't see it. By the way, this will be for the Cleveland Browns franchise the 42nd quarterback that has started a game in the last 26 seasons. That's worse than our situation. I think we were 33 over, 30-something years. 42nd QB over the last 26 seasons. Shadur is going to play at a level that people won't be killing him on Monday. That's my buy this week, or one of them. What's your first buy?
So my first buy, they played Monday night and they played very well. I'm buying some Cowboys, man. After how they look with Quinnen Williams on the line, I understand that they were going up against the Raiders, who have one of the worst offensive lines in football, but they looked really good. The offense didn't look like it was hitting their stride. It was not. They weren't really missing a lot of steps. George Pickens is incredible, and I believe him and CeeDee Lamb were out till 7:30 in the morning that same night, and George Pickens still almost put up $150 on 10 catches. So give me some Cowboys. I'm intrigued to see where they go kind of through the season, and I also want to get in on this before they play the Eagles, because if they beat the Eagles, then everyone's buying the Cowboys.
It's an interesting matchup. I'm gonna buy the Carolina Panthers.
Yes,
to be in this. You bought them earlier than I did.
Sure did.
I think that when you can run the football and you can stop the run, and you're good in that general area. And by the way, they've got some weapons. They've got some playmakers. I think Carolina is going to hang in there, and they're going to be in that mix of potentially winning the NFC South when they play the Buccaneers 2 times in their last 3 games. By the way, I give them a shot on Monday Night Football at San Francisco. I give them a chance to win that game. They're a 7-point dog. Then they play the Rams. Then they play the Saints. And then they go Bucks, Seahawks, Bucks. Mm-hmm. I'm not telling you that I'm buying Carolina to win the division. I'm telling you that I'm buying Carolina at, a half game back now with the 49ers and the Rams looming to at least be into that December final 3-game stretch with a chance to control their division-winning destiny. They're a much better football team. And really, if you go back to the beginning of the year, remember when they beat Atlanta 30-0?
Yeah.
And we were like, you got to be kidding me. And then I'm like, the Falcons for my lungs against Washington, because it always happens that way in the NFL. And look, it's not like they've beaten, anybody great except for that Packers win at Lambeau a couple of weeks ago. But the Panthers are interesting, man. They're an interesting team. They've got some players. Rico Dowdle, Tet McMillan, the rookie receiver. Their O-line is decent. Their D-line, led by Derek Brown, is outstanding. They've got corners and J.C. Horn. The kid Jackson's playing well. Yeah, Carolina is going to be in this thing until the end. That's my second buy. What's yours?
I love it. I got a sell for you. They played the Rams this week, and that secondary, especially Emmanuel Forbes, looked really good. I am selling Sam Darnold. This was the game that I was going to tell me whether or not he was going to turn into a pumpkin come playoff time. And listen, Rams did a great job. 4 picks. I can't, in good faith, pump up the Seahawks with Sam Darnold still as their quarterback going into this the end of this season if he's going to look like this against like actual competent defenses.
This is going to be like the second or third time Robert in Annapolis will mention it to me. I just, when I watch and have watched the Ravens during this 4-game winning streak over the Bears, Dolphins, Vikings, and Browns. I mean, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't get hurt on Sunday, I think Cleveland wins that game.
Yeah.
Baltimore just, they're not Baltimore yet. Maybe they're going to turn into Baltimore, but they're really still not a good defensive team. And yeah, I've looked at the schedule. I mean, it's unbelievable what they've had, right? You know, here they beat the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. They beat the Vikings, who, you know, are not very good. They just beat the Browns barely. They've got the Jets, Bengals coming up. Then they play the Steelers, their first of 2 against the Steelers. They get the Bengals again. I still am not buying Baltimore to win the AFC North. I still think it's going to be Pittsburgh when all is said and done. And
even
Baltimore's
with
not going to be in the postseason. They're not good on defense.
It's true.
Paulie wants to weigh in. Go ahead.
Man, hell to the W.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I was going to sell Sam Donald for being my boy Max just went and took that. I'm selling Aaron Rodgers. No, you good. I'm selling Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, man. And I like the defense, but the defense is kind of in shambles. And Aaron Rodgers is getting old on you, man. He's getting old on you, bro. I don't see him making it down the stretch.
I think he's going to play this week, though.
He wants to.
Yeah, but I think I think the weather's changing. You know, Sheehan, you old. I'm old. When that weather starts to change, man, you don't move like you normally move.
I don't like it as much as I used to. It's true.
Man. So
yeah.
I'm selling Aaron, and I got to buy too, man. I'm buying, and I hope Josh Harris took a real good look and a good tour this past week. I'm buying that stadium out there in Spain, bro. Man, I hope we could get something like that with the natural grass and all that, getting this going on. That was a hell of a stadium, man. So that's my buy and sell, man.
You know, if you're selling Pittsburgh and I'm selling Baltimore, that division, it's not crazy, could be won with an 8-9 record.
That's what
seriously.
It's looking like.
Yeah.
That's what it's looking like, man. 8-9.
9 and 8, I think, wins the division. I think 9 and 8 is going to win the division. I don't think Baltimore, they got.
Cincinnati's trying to get. That's why they're trying to get Joe Burrow back.
I know.
They still think they got a chance.
Yeah, they're 3-7. All right, I got to run. Thanks. Back tomorrow on Thursday. Chris Russell's next.